Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings. You know the drill, $5 in, new customers only for these NBA games. You get $150 in free plays. If you win, you know what? You can make more money than Brad or I can make right now. That simple, that easy. All right. With William Brad Allis, I am merely Mike Luke. Hello, William. How you doing?
Good, Michael. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. All right. So you and I were talking a little bit off air, but figured we'd lead with this. Was talking with somebody that would know a little bit more than me. There are those people out there. And I asked him about Christian Koloko and what he would, Christian Koloko's role in the NBA. And he said something, and I thought he put it really succinctly. He said, listen, everybody in the league knows that Christian Koloko can defend, and he's a very versatile defender. The problem is you don't know what to do with him offensively because he's not really a rim runner, because he doesn't have the fluidity, the strength to be able to slam the ball in the way that, some of these other guys can. And he hasn't really shown that he's a stretch the court type guy. I was always looking for an analysis like that of Koloko, and I thought he hit the nail on the head. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I think I personally was a little surprised Koloko went all in on the draft, and I assume he is signed with the agent. I don't know for sure. But I always thought he should be a guy who should test the waters and then figure out where he's at. Because my thought was, and I didn't think of the rim runner thing because we can see him some, but I just thought he needed a jump shot to make it in the NBA because you pretty much have to now.
Right.
It is a jump shot league. I still think there is a role for him. I think if a team, if you're a team who has 4 scorers, you can maybe get by with Koloko as a rebounder, shot blocker, putback kind of guy.
Right.
But you do limit yourselves at times. I think his best bet is to be a big guy off the bench, and then you hope he can develop because you see the leaps he has made since he got to Arizona, and then in year 1 of the Tommy Lloyd experiment. And if you give a lot of credence to Ricardo Foy's role in player development, he's an NBA guy. Maybe you're calling him, and I could see a good team maybe taking a flyer on him. But I think it would be a real shame if Koloko left school to be a mid-second round draft pick. Right. And I think that about most of these guys. I know a lot of kids are completely happy. They just want to get into a camp, and they all have belief in themselves, and you kind of have to be an elite athlete. And maybe I'm just a little more conservative when it comes to my future occupations. But if I'm not a first-round draft pick, I can't see myself leaving early unless I really need the money. And my understanding is the family doesn't need. Now, again, is it life-changing money if he sticks? Yeah. But, Dad's, I think, an engineer. The family has a real pays a real high amount of honor on education. And so I was a little surprised that he went all in. But again, do I think he's in the NBA next year? Yeah. Now it might be on a 2-way contract. It might be up and down. But yeah, I think he's too athletic and too intriguing not to have a role. I mean, because frankly, if you look at him and you look at Zeke Nnaji,
right,
I think Koloko's got way more upside. Nnaji was a first-round draft pick, and Koloko right now might be a second.
I think I think you hit the nail on the head, though. I think what Koloko really could have gained by, and I think that Tommy Lloyd would have gone along with this, is, okay, you work on your perimeter shooting. You know what? You're going to get 2 threes a game this coming season or whatever. Let's say you knock down 35% of those, and you show that, you know what, you can be 3-point shooter. I think you're just far more marketable. And I think you hit the nail on the head that this is a guy that he's got too much talent to be a second-round pick. Again, I'm not going to – he obviously feels comfortable with his decision, but it just feels like he's maybe selling himself a little bit short at this moment.
And when you look at the fact that you could put him on the floor with Ballo, Ballo's the 5 with Koloko at the 4. He shows he can knock down that elbow jumper. You show that you can knock down again. Like you said, the 3. Heck, maybe you show that you can put the ball on the floor for 2 dribbles and pull up from 17.
Right.
You pump fake in the corner, and you see that all the time with NBA bigs. So I think there was a lot he could showcase that wouldn't necessitate Tommy Lloyd really changing a whole lot. This isn't like Michael Wright asking to play a little bit on the perimeter when Michael Wright was going to be asked to move to the 5, because Arizona, if you remember that team that was coming back in 2002, he was going to play the 5. He wasn't going to play the 4 because your bigs were Ricky Anderson and the 2 freshmen. Yeah, and Wright could stroke it. Actually, I saw him hit like 15 out of 20, 15-foot, 18-foot jumpers in practice one day, but he wasn't going to get that opportunity. Whereas I think you could get that opportunity on next year's team with Tommy Lloyd's style. And again, because of the other guys you have in the fold, because you do have Tubelis, who at times can be a traditional big man. I mean, I know he's better facing the basket, but Ballo certainly, depending on who else comes in. Yeah, I think those minutes were there. And again, it doesn't take much. You're right. 2 threes a game, 1 3 a game. And maybe you hit 40% of those.
Right.
But yeah, now as it is, he's got his work cut out for him. Doesn't mean he can't do it. Doesn't mean he won't do it. But again, if I'm leaving school and I don't absolutely need the money, I think I'm looking for a more secure situation. That being said, if next year you do that as a 4th-year player and can't showcase those skills, then there's no way anyone's taking a flyer on you. So I get that too. It's kind of like Brandon Ashley. Right. Ashley could have come back to Arizona and played his way into a first-round draft pick. But if he breaks the foot again, he's never even getting a 10-day contract. Right. He was done, and ends up that he didn't play much of an NBA career. But that's the kind of thing you have to do. If I can't showcase as a 21-year-old that what I couldn't showcase as a 19-year-old, I'm certainly not getting drafted.
I think Frankie makes a great point here. Koloko is one of these guys where, and I think Ben Mathruin's a little bit like this too, and that there's got to be the right fit. You've got to find a franchise that knows how to use him. Like if you go to the Kings or someplace like that doesn't know what they're doing, you could easily get lost. If Koloko went to like the Spurs or the Warriors, even if that's a 2nd-round pick, he's going to get top-flight coaching and that they would have some kind of a plan for him, which leads me into Dalen Terry. Let's talk about Dalen. He's another guy, when you look at, he's starting to move up some mock drafts now. I kind of figured that would happen when they start poking and prodding and realizing that he's legitimately 6'8". But he's another guy. He's a first round talent. Whereas if he's going in the 2nd round, I think he has the world to gain by coming back, especially when you look at next year's squad where you've already got Ben Mathruin, who's moved on. Kirk Kriisa's good. We've talked a ton about Kirk Kriisa, Pelle Larsson, but they're kind of limited in what they can do with the dribble. Dalen Terry could be that guy that gets that opportunity to be able to make that work and really showcase some of those point forward skills that you've been talking about for so long, William.
Well, the other thing is with Terry, it's a much easier to showcase because all he has to do is do what he's been doing, but a little bit better. Now, does he want to showcase more of the point forward skills? Yeah, but he did it a lot last year. If he raises his 3-point percentage to what it was, the final 10 games where I think it was respectable. Right. If he shows, and again, I think he only has to score like 12 points a game. I don't think he has to dramatically, because again, NBA doesn't care about stats. Right. They care about metrics. They care about eyeball tests. They care about upside. Right. And Terry has a lot of upside. That's why I think if Terry stays in the draft, he gets drafted. Again, why risk being a 2nd rounder without a guaranteed contract, without the flexibility? Because, we've seen it before where when push comes to shove, if you're fighting for that last roster spot, and I'll tell you 2 guys who were really affected by this, by being 2nd-round draft picks, one from Arizona. One was Miles Simon. He got bumped out of Orlando really quick because of a first-round draft pick. Right. And the other was Alonzo Trier, who put up good NBA numbers. But guess what? The next year, that was the year the Knicks had multiple first-round draft picks, all had guaranteed contracts.
It's a massive difference between being a 1st and a 2nd-round pick.
And we always joke about Wesley Johnson staying forever, But that's why, because those guaranteed contracts, even if you are the throw in on the trade, you still got to pay the guy. So while Trier had a good little run in New York, what was it, 12, 13 points a game?
Mm-hmm. And
if you're paying a first round draft pick and he's getting you 9, the difference between 3 points is nothing in the NBA. And so that's the challenge these guys have of being second round draft picks. You have to be that much better. It's not okay, Dalen Terry's here and whoever it is, first round draft pick kids here. Terry's a little bit better. He makes the team, right? No, Terry has to be $1 million better because you're eating some of that money, or you have to find a place to ship that first round draft pick.
All right, let's talk about, speaking of making money, good point, Brad, as always. Sean Seeley, Saguaro Cougar as well, always going to be making good points. Another good point, the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. All right, yesterday, I've been bragging all year about the Miami Heat. They've just got stomped in Philadelphia for 2 straight games. Joel Embiid is back. Maybe you say, you know what? This Mike Luke doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm going to go against him. And if you're going to go against him, you're going to go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX, put in $5 against what I'm predicting, get $150 in free plays either way. 21 and up, Arizona only, gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Real quick, Brad, would you pay DeAndre Ayton the super max that he's up for?
Yes.
Right, I would too.
And here's why. One, are you going to get value trading him? I don't know. Maybe. Right. He fits that system perfect. He is still developing as a player. Now, do I think he's worth it, quote unquote? No, I don't. But I don't think most of these guys are. As I was debating somebody about the merits of Tom Brady making $37 million a year to be a color
commentator. I saw your Facebook post.
Someone mentioned Westbrook getting $40 million. Westbrook's not worth $40 million.
Right.
But he gets paid that because the numbers say so. But if you're the Suns and I think just pay the guy the max. It fits in with their salary structure as it is because Chris Paul did kind of tweak it. You keep that core happy. You've got this 3-year probably run with Chris Paul. And then the thing is you have to find all you really have to do if you keep that young core together, because they are super young, is find another point guard. Now, that's not easy as we know as Suns fans, finding that point guard and replacing a Chris Paul. But Devin Booker is just hitting his prime. You got Bridges, you got Cam Johnson, you got Ayton. That's a really good core to build around.
You know what's fascinating to me about Ayton and why I agree with you, I would pay Ayton, is that Ayton, worst case scenario, first of all, he doesn't get hurt. And he doesn't have the body that looks like he's going to really get hurt. And I can still pencil you in for 17 and 10, worst case scenario. There's not a lot of guys that I can just say, all right, no matter what, he's going to be able to get me 17 and 10. So, yeah, I mean,
he's versatile enough. He has been at times a matchup nightmare for other teams. Again, and we don't know. 3 years from now, the game could change again, and they could put a bigger premium on a big man. And suddenly DeAndre Ayton is one of the most valuable pieces in the NBA. We don't know. Right. I mean, if I had told you, the game changes about every 4 or 5 years. And we don't. Ayton's got 10 left.
Let's talk about the transfer portal now as it relates to Tommy Lloyd. I have a thought on this one. Lloyd is a lot different than Miller, as we've talked about, and that Tommy Lloyd wants to bring in, he's very specific in who he offers. He's not just going to throw, a bunch of, offers at 5 stars and then see who fit. And that's not a diss on Miller because he was really successful doing that. Lloyd is far more of an analyzer on these things. But I also think that can backfire, though, when it comes to transfer portal time, though. I think you've got to basically have your homework done. And I'm not saying he didn't, but a lot of these kids, once they hit the portal, Brad, they're making that decision really, really quickly, whether that's because of NIL, whatever the case may be. You got to be ready to rock and roll, I think, with the transfer portal.
Yeah, but I also think at the same time, one, you have to, because he's trying to build a specific way, you can't bring in the delusional kid.
Right.
A lot of these guys are leaving, mediocre programs and think they're going to go to a Power 5 team and be a stud.
Right.
No. Look at who's our buddy who was much maligned here from UNC Asheville?
Dylan Smith, Anthony Chimino's favorite guy.
Dylan Smith averaged 14 points a game as a freshman at UNC Asheville.
Right.
He came to Arizona and averaged 6.
Right.
The talent draw, and again, he played really well against good teams, but some of these guys are putting up numbers in garbage time against bad basketball teams.
Right.
But think that other guys, you look at the kid who just transferred to Creighton from South Dakota. He looks like he's going to step in and assume the exact same role.
The Kansas State kid can probably play. The guy that averaged Nigel Pack, the kid that averaged 20.
He did it at Kansas State. I'm talking, some of these other. So what you have to do is, are you willing to come in and be, for lack of a better word, Justin Kier? Kier scored a bunch of points at George Mason.
Right.
Went to Georgia and assumed a huge role.
11, 12 points per game in the SEC.
And then comes to Arizona and assumes even a lesser role.
Right.
So are you willing to do that? Because, frankly, if you're Tommy Lloyd, you don't want Mark Lyons here.
Right.
And that's no diss on Mark Lyons, but
hey, you be nice to Mark Lyons. I like Mark Lyons.
But what is Mark Lyons? Mark Lyons is a lead guard who needs his shots, right?
Right.
Terrell Brown would not have worked at Arizona last year.
Right.
Terrell Brown didn't really work at Arizona the year before either. Certain guys are built certain ways. So what you need is a guy who's happy being Kier or Pella Larson or whoever, who's going to come in, and obviously you want him to try to beat out Kirk Risa. But he also has to know he's probably not beating out Kirk Risa or, Adama Ball or Pella Larson, who's going to be happy taking less minutes, less shots. If you're the St. Bonaventure kid, but have a legit shot at getting to the Final Four, have a better shot at a pro career because you're doing against better talent. So I think Lloyd has to strike fast. He also doesn't want to bring in the wrong guy and suddenly mess up team chemistry. And frankly, they don't seem to be a staff who sells you on a pipe dream. And, a lot of guys are chasing that pipe dream. Right.
Now, Azuolas Tubelis, and then we're going to move on to a little bit of U of A football. I needed your expertise on a few things. Tubelis, what do you expect just from a statistical perspective? Let's say Dalen Terry comes back. What does Luke and Brad Allis look at and say that's what I expect out of you next year, Azuolas?
I want 16 or 17 points a game and 7 to 9 rebounds.
Okay.
And to be the best or second best player on the team. I think he's capable.
Totally agree with that. Okay.
And he was for much of this year. I mean, it's in many ways, and I can't believe I haven't thought of this before. Azuolas Tubelis' season last season very much mirrors senior Hassan Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Early January, Hassan Adams was averaging 19 points a game.
Right.
And then went into the funk and the tailspin. A lot of that was due to the death of Shantanice Polk, who he was very close with.
Right.
In 2.5 months, his scoring average dropped by 6.5 points. Do you know how bad you have to play to do that?
Right.
But people forget, for the first 2.5 months of the season, he was playing like the Pac-12 Player of the Year. Now, was Tubelis that good? No. Was Tubelis that bad at the end? No, but Tubelis had a rocky finish to the season, which probably coincided with injury. I don't know if he was ever right because, frankly, we know he had a high ankle sprain, which is a lot different than a normal ankle sprain.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, as long as he can get his head right, which you assume if you're healthy you can, then I expect him to be really, really good.
All right, let's talk some Arizona football now. I had Greg Biggins on yesterday from 24/7 Sports. And
dude, I've known Greg off and on since like 98 when he was with Student Sports.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, next time we're going to have a three-way in here right here.
I don't even know if he remembers me, but
Brady remembers
we
you.
We worked at the original version of Scout.com when it was the Insiders.
He made a point. He was talking about Jed Fish, and he said, honestly, when Jed Fish was hired, I was kind of like everybody else, where I'm like, I don't really know what to make of this, one way or the other. He said, but after I talked with Jed Fish, after I talked with some of the people that he brought in, I started to think, okay, maybe this thing could work. And I asked him, and again, this isn't really breaking any news, but he said Arizona right now with the kids in California is a very interesting entity. Now they've got to start winning some games for sure. Has Arizona with the kids during your time, covering, going back to the Tony Mason days, has Arizona ever been cool with has Arizona ever been cool with the kids in California?
Yes.
Okay.
Stoops
Tell me
era.
more.
Stoops era. Early Stoops era.
For sure.
And they were cool everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They were recruiting Texas, really, like, as good as Tommy could be in Texas, Stoops was better.
Right.
Stoops was in Vegas. Now, he couldn't quite ever get the top tier Bishop Gorman guys, but he got them on campus. I mean, he got who's the guy who ended up being the running back coach here at Arizona?
Yes.
The Dallas Cowboy guy, DeMarco Murray.
DeMarco Murray, yes.
Got him on campus. They had a 5-star linebacker, got him on, who ended up going to Oklahoma, got him on campus. He was going, and what people really forget, there was a stretch there, and again, it was sort of Tommy-itis. Stoops went toe-to-toe with USC on more than one occasion.
Not just Lewis Holmes, my friend.
No. Now, he finished second almost every time.
Right.
But
the Sharice Wright,
Stanley Havili.
There was a group of defensive backs.
Everson Griffin.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I did an interview with Everson Griffin at his house in Avondale, so that's
really
wow. Legit.
Devin Ross Devin Ross could have gone anywhere.
Devin Ross, that was Texas USC. So they had some real cachet there, and they had a really nice mix of recruiters.
Right.
Tuiasa Sopo was in with that Polynesian community. Mm-hmm. Much maligned, but very, I think, Canales.
Right.
Canales could recruit, man. Kids liked him.
Willie Tuitama brought him in.
And again, Tuiasa Sopo had a little role in that. They used to debate who really brought Willie in.
Right.
Who was the wide receiver coach? African-American gentleman. He was that guy who could, he was much like Rodney Tension. Could be the cool uncle to the kid, right. Go and charm mom, go talk trash with dad. Everyone loved him. But they had a really good thing going. I mean, they kept, with the exception of, and why can't I think of the kid's name, the center from South Point.
Chris O'Dowd.
Chris O'Dowd and a kid named Davila from Cienega. They kept all the local kids home. Mm-hmm. They did very well in Phoenix. Tim Kish had a lock. Not a
Terry Longbonds.
Terry Longbonds, who again never got a carry at Arizona,
but was a 4-star back.
People forget how good. Yeah, he was a legit guy. They had the other running.
Xavier Smith.
Yeah, Xavier Smith. You look at some of the DBs. They did very well. JC, which Rich Rodriguez did not do. But they were cool for a while, and then when they couldn't quite get over the hump, they kind of USC stayed USC. Obviously, Pete Carroll was there. And then you kind of had that was the rise of Oregon again, but they're kind of back in that case.
Hey, this is a great question from Sean Seeley. Brad, did Tommy like recruiting, or was it a necessary evil for him?
I think Tommy liked recruiting back then because it was a different game.
Right.
He could just go show up and find those diamonds in the rough.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't a lot of camps and showcases. There was no internet or next to no internet. So if he found a kid, he could, that's why he mined JUCO so well.
Right.
People forget. Look at all the NFL linemen. They're all JUCOs.
Edwin Mulatalo, Marcus McFadden. I know there's a ton more that Glenn Parker,
Glenn Parker. You look at who's the other Polynesian guy who played in the same class. That he would go to Snowflake and look at the Sprott brothers. He found Teddy in Roseville, California.
Right.
And he also, again, he took chances. He found a niche. It was first a Polynesian community, but he'd go in and find an undersized guy.
Right.
He'd go find Rob Waldrop, go find Donnie Salem. Now, were there some chemicals that maybe made him bigger and stronger? Yeah, maybe.
For sure.
he'd go into LA and didn't have to go to the top schools, but he'd go find the Lovett brothers. He'd go find Antoine Carter. He'd go find Trung Candidate, who played at an Alhambra I think it was Alhambra, who won one game in like 2 years. But that's what he did. He went and he found these guys and saw that he could play. Now, was it always successful? No. Trung Candidate was a defensive back whose mom had to beg him to give him a chance. Right. Dennis Northcutt started out as a defensive back.
And he was good at defensive back. I think multiple interceptions as a freshman.
He had a pick 6 against John Malkovich's Illinois team. Lance Briggs started out as a fullback. But he brought in these guys who were just athletes.
Right.
Found a place for them. And if you look at the number of guys who changed positions, even when they got to the NFL, certainly there are criticisms of Tommy, and I think there is been some revisionist history. But at the same time, that guy could evaluate talent.
Right. So
he actually didn't like recruiting head to head against the big boys.
You know what's amazing? You know what's amazing though about the recruiting back then, and I try to tell some people this. Bijan Robinson obviously is one of the faces of college football right now. But if you were just to go by recruiting services, and again, recruiting isn't nearly as big, Michael and Mario Bates were every bit the high school recruits. They were both first-team parade All-Americans, and obviously Arizona got one of them. Can you imagine if Arizona football brought in like the top running back in the country? Like, I mean...
But here's the big difference. If there wasn't cable television and the internet, Bijan might be playing down the street so his parents could see him.
That's a good point. That's a great point. That's a great point.
Even 10 years ago, there were kids who wanted. I know there were some guys who ended up at the U of A from Tucson who would have left, but they knew their parents couldn't see them where they wanted to go.
Right.
And vice versa. There were guys who wanted to come to Arizona, but when for their games, I still remember going to watch an Arizona-Oregon game in the early 2000s, and not like 2001, but like 2008.
Right.
Where we found a bar that pirated the signal from an Oregon broadcast.
It sounds like your old post-game shows where you would have to watch the show in the KNST room.
Yeah, well, Shu did that. I never did the KNST, but yeah, we found a bar on the east side. It's actually right there by the roller rink,
right?
And they were able to. Yeah, they're like, yeah, we got the transponder codes. We know a guy who works for the Oregon broadcast.
All right, let me ask you this. Noah Fafita, you could tell by talking with Greg Biggins that, again, he wasn't proclaiming anything, but you could just kind of tell, especially when he said there's something there with the kid. I'm going to put you on the spot. This is barring injury, over or under, Noah Fafita starts a year and a half at quarterback at the University of Arizona. Barring injury, so that doesn't... So
I will say over, but let me put an asterisk on that. If they're really good before he starts, they may out-recruit him.
Right.
Because as good as I think Fafita could be, at the end of the day, if you're suddenly bringing in a legit 4.5-star kid who's 6'3", 6'4", that's just easier to run with. Right. And I don't know, again, they got Brandon Doman. I don't know how good he really is. I haven't seen enough of him. Because again, quarterback is the hardest position to evaluate. I don't care what some people out there say. There's a reason NFL teams miss on 50% of their first-round draft picks. Right. There's a reason teams miss on 5 stars, and there's a reason 5 stars sometimes need to change the scenery. I mean, everyone's like, how could Ohio State miss on Joe Burrow? Well, Ohio State lost about 1 game when Joe Burrow left.
Here's the better one. Scott Frost said to Joe Burrow, "No thanks. We have Adrian Martinez."
And coming out of high school, Martinez is the real deal.
Yeah, well, for sure. Trust me. I lived that.
Look at Arizona. But look at Arizona. How many? Richard Kovalchuk, 4-star.
4-star
Arizona beat Tennessee for him.
John Rattay, even when he came over.
Yeah, although all you had to do is look at his arm and know, man, maybe not.
That's not good enough.
Nick Costa.
Your guy, Nick Costa.
You know what? We didn't know he didn't like to be hit. Ryan O'Hara.
Oh, the 6'8" Ryan O'Hara.
A guy looked good, physically great, but it was the ability to learn the system. And then Tui Tama, I think, lived up to the hype, but if he doesn't get concussed against LSU, he probably has an even better career. But then look, who's the best quarterback in school history? Arguably, it's Nick Foles, 3-star kid, couldn't get recruited his own home state.
Three different schools, committed to ASU, then went to Michigan State, then came to Arizona,
and it clicked.
Now,
and then had to beat out Matt Scott because of bad performance from Matt Scott, because Matt Scott was more talented, frankly.
Let me ask you this: if you were on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX, and the Chiefs season is coming up right now, and again, barring injury, so all the main players, would you bet on the DraftKings Sportsbook app that the Chiefs make the AFC title game?
It depends what my odds are, but I think the Chiefs, and I think they have 2 more signings ahead of them. I think they will end up bringing Melvin Ingram back in the fold, which will shore up their pass rush. I think they're going to add a defensive lineman. And yeah, I actually think the Chiefs are going to be sneaky. People are overlooking them, but the Chiefs just retooled their entire team in the draft and free agency.
Yep. And so again, that's where you would go. You put in $5 on these NBA games, and it doesn't matter who win. You get $150 in free plays, new customers. All right. Before we sign off, let me ask you about the transfer portal here and how this pertains to, let's use Adia Barnes, for example. I think this is why the transfer portal is a good thing. Now, our very close friend John Schuster does not like the transfer portal. I do like the transfer portal because I think it allows kids who come into, let's just use Arizona, for example. A lot of people are getting upset that, 9 kids transferred. Here's the difference, though. These kids can all go play immediately somewhere else. They don't have to sit out, and Adia Barnes at the same time can bring in more talented players. Again, you don't want 10 players leaving. I get it. But I think the portal is the best medium for both sides to be able to make both sides happy. Do you agree? You disagree? Where do you stand?
First of all, I find that people being irate at the transfer portal is misplaced because all the transfer portal is a formal version of what's been going on for years.
Right.
The difference is now the automatic 1-year transfer. That you don't have to sit out the year.
Right.
I mean, the portal is just like a list, but that list existed previously. It was a little less formalized. So let's not pretend that the portal is this great. I mean, ask Lute Olson how many guys transferred out and in of the program without a transfer portal.
Right.
Now, what I think the problem, it's good and it's bad. I don't like guys, I find it really icky that a bunch of Washington State kids are going to Washington.
Right. Right.
Like I think it would be awful if a bunch of ASU guys put up some good stats and came to Arizona. Now, I think taking a lateral, a step back, leaving conference, going back closer to home. In the case of Adia Barnes, let's even, if you want to use Adia Barnes or Shane Noel. Is Noel going to play at Arizona? Not next year. So why should he not go to try to find a better situation?
Right.
And why should he be penalized because he kept his word to Arizona and it wasn't the situation he signed up for?
Right.
Now, I think some of it is, it's a cautionary tale. Let's look at Tucson and Drew Dixon. It took him 2 years to find a home.
Right.
2 years to find a school, and he had to go to a much lower division. So a lot of guys are jumping in the portal thinking, oh, this is my ticket. And they're going from Arizona or Oregon State or whatever to like D2 NIAI schools.
Right.
So it's not, you got to be careful. And I don't know what the answer there is because you could say, well, the school has to guarantee it. Well, why? So if look at a lot of the guys who left Arizona who are now at much lower schools. But if you're the 9 players on Adia Barnes' team and 7 of them weren't going to play next year.
Right.
So why should you not be able to go and play right away?
Exactly.
And do we need maybe, do I feel bad for teams who cultivate a kid for 2 or 3 years and then lose him to a bigger school? Absolutely. Like if I was Duquesne, I'd be sick that we lost, McConnell.
Mm-hmm.
If
you were UNC Asheville, you'd be sick you lost Dylan Smith.
And part of me would be like, why didn't Dylan stay? He could have scored 20. But,
right.
So yeah, it's not a perfect situation. I wish maybe they'd create some, I don't necessarily like the automatic. Part of me would almost like there to be some kind of like process, a better appeals process.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, you're Shane Noel. Arizona doesn't care if you transfer right away. But, I think, I never actually had a problem with schools blocking kids. I didn't like it when they blocked kids out of conference, but I don't like you going in conference just because, and for the same situation. Like, I have a problem. Like, if you're a Washington State kid and the coach is like, yeah, you're not going to play, and you go to Washington, that's one thing. But just because, you'd rather live in Seattle than Pullman, I don't know about that.
Well, all right, William, can't thank you enough for hopping on here. William, you have your own podcast. Tell the people about it at obviously at Twitter at WSR Brad. What do you got?
Yeah, we're still on hiatus, just trying to find some good recording times and, dealing with basically just too much kid sports right now with Little League and volleyball and things like that. Hey, the Little League team is 8-1. The volleyball team is 4-2. We'll be start recording again here real soon. And it is called the Wildcat Sports Report podcast. And I tweeted out, I put it on Facebook. You can find it on Spotify and Apple. Somehow when my old hosting site went down, I can't get it up on the other ones. But, it's good enough. And Anchor, I think. So check it out. Just follow me, follow Mike. You'll find links to it. All
right. He's William Brad Allis. He'll be back on next Tuesday, 12:30. I am merely Mike Luke. Saguaro Cougars in the house. Sean Seeley, that's for you. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.